Bull Market Bulletin.
All right, so let's dive into something that you might have heard whispers about.
Yeah.
Maybe even dismissed as some kind of internet fad. Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
We've got these two interview snippets from Michael Saylor,
Right.
the CEO of MicroStrategy,
Yeah.
a guy who's basically gone all in on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some pretty strong opinions about why it's not just an investment,
Yeah.
but like a whole new way to think about wealth.
Yeah, absolutely.
A life raft in a sea of financial uncertainty.
And he's not pulling any punches.
Right.
These clips are packed with thought-provoking arguments about the traditional financial system.
Yeah.
And why Bitcoin might just be the answer we've all been looking for.
Okay, so first things first. Saylor goes straight for the jugular with the U.S. dollar.
Mm.
He's basically saying that dollars and any currency like it are designed to lose value over time.
Yep.
Does that sound familiar to you?
It's the inflation monster we've all heard about, right?
Right. Yeah.
Governments print more money, and the value of each dollar goes down. But Saylor takes it a step further with this concept of the half-life of wealth.
Half-life.
Yeah.
Like something out of a science fiction movie.
Kind of, but it's a stark reality.
Yeah.
He says, due to inflation at an average rate of 7% per year,
Go ahead.
the value of your money gets cut in half every 10 years.
Wow.
So think about your savings account.
Yeah.
At a 7% inflation rate, their purchasing power could be halved in just 10 years.
Wow.
How does that impact your plans for retirement or a big purchase down the line?
Yeah, that really puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
It's like watching your hard-earned money slowly disappear, even if it's just sitting in the bank.
Exactly.
Right.
And Saylor's argument is that while we're busy trying to outpace inflation with traditional investments, there's a better, more secure alternative. Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin swoops in as the superhero.
Well, Saylor certainly thinks so.
Okay.
His big point is that unlike dollars, which can be printed endlessly,
Right.
Bitcoin has a fixed supply. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, which makes it scarce.
Right.
And according to Saylor, thermodynamically sound.
Okay, break that down for me.
Yeah.
Thermodynamically sound.
Sure.
That sounds pretty complex.
It basically means that Bitcoin, unlike physical assets that decay or fiat currencies subject to government manipulation,
Right.
has a fixed supply, making it resistant to degradation or manipulation over time.
Okay.
It can't be created out of thin air, and no one can control it.
Ah, so it's like a digital gold rush, but with a limited amount of gold to be found.
That's a good analogy.
Okay.
And just like gold, its value is driven by that scarcity.
Right.
The more people want it and the fewer Bitcoin that are available, the higher the price goes.
Okay.
Saylor compares it to beachfront property. You can't just create more beachfront.
Right.
And because it's desirable and limited, its value has skyrocketed over time.
So he's saying that Bitcoin is like digital beachfront property.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
It's a finite resource in a digital world that's becoming increasingly valuable.
That's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
But what about all the talk of Bitcoin being risky and volatile?
Right.
It seems like the price swings wildly all the time.
That's a common concern, and Saylor doesn't shy away from it.
Yeah?
In fact, he argues that the volatility is a feature, not a bug.
Wait, he actually thinks the volatility is a good thing.
He does.
Really?
He believes it comes from the fact that Bitcoin is a truly free and open market, susceptible to short-term speculation, which creates those price fluctuations.
Okay.
But he compares it to being able to buy and sell multi-million-dollar properties with huge leverage in minutes.
Right.
The real estate market would be just as volatile under those conditions.
Okay, I see his point.
Yeah.
It's like the stock market on steroids. But if you're in it for the long haul, those daily ups and downs shouldn't matter as much.
Exactly.
Right.
Saylor emphasizes that long-term investors shouldn't be overly concerned with short-term price movements. It's the annualized rate of return that counts.
Right.
And historically, Bitcoin has outperformed traditional assets by a significant margin.
So he's basically saying ignore the noise and focus on the bigger picture.
Precisely.
Right.
And that bigger picture, according to Saylor, is a future where Bitcoin becomes the primary store of value globally.
Okay.
He calls it recapitalization.
Recapitalization.
Yeah.
That sounds intense.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that?
Well, to understand that,
Yeah.
we need to look at how capital flows in the world today.
Yeah.
Saylor uses this great analogy of a mountain lake with a waterfall.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Let's hear about this waterfall.
Okay. So imagine water flowing downhill from a high energy state to a lower one.
Okay.
Saylor says capital acts the same way,
Mm-hmm.
always seeking the safest and most efficient place to be. When you
Yeah.
think about the state of the world right now,
Yeah.
the wars, the political instability, and the rising inflation,
Right.
it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
where is all that capital going to flow?
Right. Is Bitcoin, with its fixed supply and decentralized nature, becoming that lower energy state, that safe haven?
It's like a financial life raft in a stormy sea.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see why he's so bullish on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But what about traditional investments?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't we just ride out the storm in the stock market?
Sure.
Maybe invest in some real estate?
Saylor addresses that too.
Okay.
He basically says that while the stock market can be a good way to try and beat inflation,
Right.
it's still a gamble.
Right.
Companies face all sorts of risks.
Yeah.
Competition lawsuits, bad management, even natural disasters.
Okay.
You're always trying to pick winners and losers.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, sometimes it feels like playing the lottery,
That's a good point.
right?
It's like you're betting on a horse in a race, but you don't know if it's going to stumble, get spooked,
Mhm.
or just plain refuse to run.
Exactly.
Right.
And remember, companies can disappear overnight.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Think of companies like Kodak or Blockbuster. They were once giants, but technology and changing consumer behavior wiped them out.
Wow.
With stocks, you're not just betting on the market, you're betting on the companies themselves.
Right.
And that adds another layer of uncertainty.
Okay, I get that. But wouldn't real estate be a safer bet? Everyone needs a place to live, right?
Sure, real estate can be a good investment.
Yeah.
But it's not without its downsides.
Like what?
It's illiquid, meaning it can be hard to sell quickly if you need to access your cash.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's also susceptible to economic downturns, property taxes, maintenance costs, and a whole host of other headaches.
So you're saying all our traditional safe havens aren't as safe as we thought they were?
Saylor's argument is that they all carry inherent risks that are often overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Bitcoin comes in.
Okay.
He argues that because it's not tied to any specific company, government, or physical asset,
Uh-huh.
it's inherently less risky in the long run.
Okay.
It's a decentralized system governed by math and code,
Right?
not by politicians or CEOs.
So it's more about betting on the technology itself, on this idea of a decentralized financial system, rather than on the whims of individual companies or countries,
Exactly.
right?
And Saylor believes that as more people and institutions understand this,
Mm-hmm.
they'll start to see Bitcoin as a superior store of value.
Yeah.
He sees it as the inevitable destination for capital in a world where trust in traditional institutions is eroding.
I'm starting to understand the appeal, but I still can't shake this feeling that Bitcoin is just too volatile, too unpredictable.
Right.
What if the price crashes? What if it's all just a big bubble?
Saylor acknowledges those concerns,
Yeah.
but he encourages people to look beyond the daily price fluctuations and
Yes.
focus on the long-term trends.
Okay.
He argues that the volatility is a natural part of a free and open market,
Mm-hmm.
especially one that's still in its early stages of adoption.
But doesn't that volatility make it incredibly risky?
Well,
I mean, if the price can swing by thousands of dollars in a day, how can anyone feel secure investing in it?
Saylor addresses that directly in one of the clips.
Right.
He says people often misunderstand volatility.
Mm-hmm.
They see it as risk, when really it's just a measure of how much the price fluctuates.
Okay.
He compares it to a roller coaster.
Yeah.
A roller coaster is volatile, but it's not risky unless you fall off.
Okay. I like that analogy.
Right.
It's a wild ride, but as long as you stay strapped in, you'll come out okay on the other side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with Bitcoin, Saylor argues the real risk is not the volatility itself,
Okay.
but the possibility that something could fundamentally undermine the technology or prevent its wider adoption.
Right.
But he sees that risk as extremely low,
Okay.
especially as Bitcoin becomes more decentralized and resilient.
So he's saying that the technology itself is sound and the volatility is just a temporary side effect of its growth and maturation.
That's his argument.
Okay.
He believes that as the market matures, the volatility will decrease,
Mm-hmm.
and Bitcoin will become a more stable and predictable store of value.
Right.
He even compares it to a natural phenomenon,
Okay.
like a waterfall driven by fundamental economic principles.
It's starting to sound less like gambling and more like investing in a powerful force of nature.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be realistic. Not everyone has the stomach for a roller coaster ride, even if the potential payoff is huge.
Sure.
What would you say to someone who's still hesitant, maybe even skeptical about Bitcoin's long-term prospects?
That's a fair question, and I think it's important to acknowledge that Bitcoin is not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a new technology, it's complex, and it does come with risks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also important to recognize that we're at a unique moment in history.
What do you...
Well, think about it.
Okay.
We're living in a time of unprecedented technological change, economic uncertainty, and political polarization.
Right.
The old ways of doing things are being challenged,
Uh-huh.
and the systems we've relied on for decades are starting to show cracks.
You're talking about inflation, the rising cost of living, the instability of the stock market,
Right.
the erosion of trust in governments and institutions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in this environment, I think it's prudent to at least explore alternative solutions,
Mm-hmm.
to consider new ways of managing and protecting your wealth.
Okay.
And that's where Bitcoin comes in.
Right.
It's a radical departure
Oh.
from the traditional financial system.
Yeah.
But it offers a unique set of features and benefits that could prove to be incredibly valuable in the years to come.
So it's not just about making a quick buck. It's about hedging against the uncertainties of the future, about taking control of your own financial destiny.
That's a big part of the appeal.
Right.
And Saylor believes that as more people understand this,
Mm-hmm.
they'll inevitably see the value of Bitcoin not just as an investment,
Right.
but as a tool for empowerment, for financial freedom, for participating in a new and potentially more equitable financial system.
Okay. I'm definitely starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
It's not just about the price of Bitcoin itself.
Right.
It's about the potential of this technology to reshape the world as we know it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people still struggle with the practical side of things.
Sure.
What does it actually mean to invest in Bitcoin?
Yeah.
How do you buy it? Where do you store it? It all seems so complicated.
Those are all valid questions, and we'll definitely delve into those practical aspects in the next segment.
Okay, good.
But before we do, I want to touch on one more crucial point that Saylor makes.
Okay.
And it's about the potential impact of Bitcoin on the future of wealth itself.
Okay, let's hear it. This is where things get really interesting.
All right.
All right, so we've talked about the wild ride of Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
its potential as a safe haven,
Yeah. Yeah.
and even its power to, reshape the financial landscape.
Right.
But what about this, recapitalization idea?
Yeah.
What does Saylor actually mean when he talks about the future of wealth being tied to Bitcoin?
Well, he's essentially predicting a paradigm shift.
Okay.
A world where Bitcoin becomes the primary store of value globally. Think about it this way.
Yeah.
Right now, most people store their wealth in things like real estate stocks, bonds, gold, and of course, fiat currencies like the dollar.
Right, the usual suspects.
Yep.
We try to diversify, spread the risk, hope for the best.
Exactly. But Saylor's point is that all of these traditional assets are inherently flawed.
Oh.
They're susceptible to inflation manipulation, geopolitical risks,
Right.
and all sorts of other factors that can erode their value over time.
Yeah.
He argues that Bitcoin, with its fixed supply, decentralized nature, and inherent security, offers a more robust and reliable alternative.
So it's like he's saying, don't put all your eggs in the same basket, but make sure one of those baskets is a Bitcoin basket.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
He believes that as more people wake up to the limitations of traditional assets
Right.
and the advantages of Bitcoin, they'll start to shift their wealth accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that waterfall analogy again.
Right.
Capital will flow to where it's treated best,
Right.
where it's most likely to be preserved and grow.
So it's not that real estate stocks and bonds will suddenly vanish.
Right.
But rather that Bitcoin will become the foundation, the bedrock of the global financial system with everything else orbiting around it.
That's the vision Saylor paints.
Okay.
And while it might sound radical, even outlandish,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that we've seen these kinds of paradigm shifts before throughout history.
Right.
Think about the transition from the gold standard to fiat currency,
Mm-hmm.
or the rise of the internet and the digital economy.
Right.
These were once revolutionary ideas that transformed the world as we knew it.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Huh.
But even if we entertain this idea of Bitcoin becoming the dominant store of value,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean for the average person?
Right.
Will we be paying for our groceries with Bitcoin?
Uh,
Will our salaries be paid in Bitcoin?
yeah.
What does this recapitalized world look like?
Well, Saylor believes it will be a gradual transition, not an overnight revolution.
Okay.
He predicts that as Bitcoin's market cap grows and its volatility decreases,
Mm-hmm.
it will become increasingly integrated into the mainstream financial system.
Okay.
We'll see more businesses accepting Bitcoin as payment.
Right.
more financial institutions offering Bitcoin-related products and services, and more individuals using Bitcoin for everyday transactions.
So it's not about completely replacing the existing system,
Right.
but rather about building a parallel system, a better system that gradually gains traction and eventually becomes the dominant force.
That's the idea.
Okay.
And Saylor even lays out a timeline for how he thinks this will unfold.
Okay.
He predicts that over the next 2 decades, we'll see a steady increase in Bitcoin adoption, with a corresponding decrease in its volatility as the market matures.
Right.
He even suggests that Bitcoin's price could reach millions of dollars per coin by 2045.
Millions of dollars per coin. That's a mind-boggling number.
Yeah.
But even if it doesn't reach those astronomical heights,
Right.
the potential for growth is still enormous, right?
Absolutely. And here's the key takeaway.
Yeah.
Even if you're skeptical about Saylor's specific predictions or the timeline he lays out,
Right.
the underlying message is clear.
Okay.
Bitcoin is a transformative technology with the potential to reshape the way we think about money and wealth.
Right.
It's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And ignoring it could be a costly mistake.
So what should people do with this information? What's the next step for someone who's been listening to this deep dive and is now thinking, okay, maybe I need to take this Bitcoin thing seriously?
Well, as always, the first step is education.
Okay.
Don't just take our word for it, or even Michael Saylor's.
Right.
Do your own research, read articles, watch videos, explore the vast amount of information available online. And don't be afraid to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, to engage in critical thinking.
Right.
This is your financial future we're talking about,
Yeah.
and you deserve to make informed decisions.
That's right. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And in the world of finance, that power is more important than ever.
Absolutely.
And once you've done your research, once you have a better understanding of what Bitcoin is and how it works,
Right.
then you can start exploring the practical side of things.
Yeah,
How to buy it, where to store it, and how to manage the risks involved.
exactly. There are plenty of reputable resources available to guide you through that process.
Okay.
And remember, it's not an all-or-nothing proposition. You can start small, invest what you're comfortable with,
Right.
and gradually increase your exposure as you gain confidence and knowledge.
So it's like dipping your toes in the water
Yeah.
before diving headfirst into the deep end.
Precisely. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
The world of Bitcoin and blockchain technology is constantly evolving.
Right.
So it's important to stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
This has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of Bitcoin. And I think we've just scratched the surface. But hopefully we've given our listeners some food for thought, some new perspectives to consider,
Yeah.
and maybe even a little bit of that FOMO feeling.
I think so too. And as always, it's important to remember that the future is uncertain.
Right.
But by embracing new ideas, challenging the status quo, and taking control of our own financial destinies,
Right.
we can navigate that uncertainty with confidence and optimism.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, the best investment you can make is in yourself and your own education.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.